Under Listening Pulse, we have Veteran Spotlight, Dan Faczek, and I will turn this over to Trustee Geezer, who has handled these.
Thank you very much. Throughout the year, we're honoring veterans in our community, having them come up and tell us a little about their time in the service. And today, we're very honored to have longtime resident Dan Faczek join us. Dan is a recently retired Army veteran. He spent 29 years in the service, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his time in the service and what he's doing nowadays to help veterans. Dan, thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Faczek. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I worked for the Illinois National Guard for over 29 years, and by the time I retired, I was a Master Sergeant. I've been a resident of Carroll Stream for over 26 years. I've been married for 27 years to my wife, Carmen, and we have 3 children. My oldest son, Daniel, is an architect and is currently married. My middle son, John Carlo, is a recent graduate from Columbia College and has a small mobile DJ business called Street Sounds Entertainment. My youngest daughter, Catalina Rose, is a junior at Illinois State University and is in public relations and marketing. I've been blessed with a good marriage, a wonderful family, and at times, however, it was a struggle with the demands of my military career. I joined the Army 2 years after I graduated from high school. At that time, I was a journeyman in the Painters Union, and I knew college wasn't for me. But what I knew is that I wanted to serve my country. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go active duty or stay home close to support my parents, so I enlisted in the Army National Guard. I completed my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. From there, I went to complete several military occupational schools, known as MOSs, ranging from tactical communications, vehicle mechanic, medical specialist, unit supply NCO, and a military police officer. During my career in the military, I've been deployed 4 times to a combat area, including the Middle East and Germany, in support of Bosnia-Herzegovina campaign. Right after I was married, I deployed to Kuwait during Operation Desert Shield as a storm. My wife and I were expecting our first child when I left. As a matter of fact, I missed the birth out of 2 out of 3 of my children while being deployed. When I returned home from the Gulf War, my son was 5 months old. My father had recently passed away. I lost my job with the Painters Union, something that really shouldn't have happened. When the military learned of my predicament, I was offered a full-time position with the Illinois National Guard. Even though it meant I'd be taking a significant pay cut, I accepted the position and I continued to work with the Guard for the remainder of my career. Shortly after the terrorist attack of September 11th, our military police unit assumed the responsibilities of Homeland Security at both Midway and O'Hare. Our mission was to provide safety and security of all passengers, as the TSA was just starting to evolve into its function. Immediately after that mission, I was again deployed to Iraq during Operation Enduring Freedom, which provided convoy escorts for our troops. As the fighting continued in the Middle East, I was fortunate enough to be redeployed and embedded with the Iraqi soldiers in an advisory capacity under the command of General Petraeus. During Operation Iraqi Freedom, we taught, coached, and mentored the Iraqi senior leadership in preparation of the U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. In addition to the combat-related missions, I was involved in humanitarian aid, peacekeeping missions to places like Bolivia, Guatemala, Italy, South Korea, and most recently I participated in the NATO summit in Chicago. Over my 29 years of service, I have received over 25 medals, ribbons, and commendation, to include Joint Service Commendation Medal, Meritorious Unit Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Presidential Unit Commendation Medal. During this time, I also served my community through affiliations with the Boy Scouts of America, the VFW, and the Knights of Columbus. Being in the military, I've learned the most important thing of being a responsible and dedicated individual. I have seen firsthand what citizens in other parts of the world who endure in their daily lives. They don't have the freedoms and the privileges that citizens of our country have. Unfortunately, many of the people in our country take these for granted. This saddens me because I know the many sacrifices that I made and other soldiers have made to maintain the freedoms and privileges in our country. I know what it's like firsthand to lose a fellow soldier who made the ultimate sacrifice in battle. I'm grateful for what we have in the United States and the democracy that makes our country strong. My faith has been a major part of my career. I thank God that I've been able to serve my country and at the end have been able to come home to reunite with my friends and family. I've learned firsthand about the importance of having the support of not only my family, but my military family, but also the support from the community as well. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much for speaking with us today. I just want, from me, and I'm sure the other members of the board will reiterate, we thank you for your service. We thank you for the things you gave up to protect us and to keep us free. And in my mind, you are a hero. So, thank you. Anyone else on the board have something?
I'm fortunate, I go to the same church you do, and I see you in church with your family all the time, so I thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mayor.
Dan, thank you very much for your service, sir. That's, nobody could ask for more than that. And I agree with Trustee Geezer. You're a hero, sir.
Thank you.
Daniel, I have to say, I've known you how many years now? Many, many years, and I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were in the military. I knew you had a distinguished career. I've watched your family grow. You should be so incredibly proud of your children. I know every single one of them. One I'm probably a little more partial to than the others, but congratulations to what you've done. I mean, you've raised a great family. You've shown your family what it is to work very, very hard, and I'm honored to get to work next to you.
Thank you.
Dan, a heartfelt thank you for your service from me. I worked with a Vietnam veteran in the past, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to tell his stories. And he would roll them into like a scene from Combat, from the old TV show Combat, and it was very intense. I just can't. I don't have any experience with it, but it must have been so intense for you. A heartfelt thank you for your service, and God bless you.
I didn't want to touch on any of all that, but I mean, it was, you see the good with the bad. You see a lot of death, destruction, but you see a lot of good coming out of the things that you put into going back and forth to the Middle East.
Thank you.
Things.
I think you stated it well when you said about the United States. When you see what it's like in these other countries and what they do to their people, we're fortunate to be here
People have nothing, and they're happy.
and happy.
Sir, I have never met you, and it's very my pleasure to hear your story and hear what you have to say about the service and the experiences you've had. I do have some friends who have children who are in the military and newlyweds, and any advice for young men and women going into the military now who have spouses at home when they're going overseas?
They're going to have to really love what they do and have to be all in on it. It's not something that you could join and say, I'm not sure if I like this or not. It's as many times as I deployed to try to give some advice to the younger people as missions kept rolling on, I ended up being the old guy. So then being the guy putting his arm around that guy, telling him what to do, what not to do, and how to keep things kind of in line where you're at and at home to keep a happy medium. But it's hard on both. But it's even harder with the wife and children that you leave, because they have to assume all of the duties and responsibilities of everything you were doing, and just communicating, if you're able to communicate with one another. Just from going to the Gulf War, I was writing letters, and I'd have to wait in line for hours to make a 5-minute phone call, and if we got a Scud missile launched at us, they'd cut the phone lines, you'd have to get out of line. Then it started getting into social media and trying to keep things and keep the people grounded that are on ground of what you're doing and why you're there, to not get wrapped up as much as you can in what you're family's going through, at some point you gotta cut ties and stay focused on what your mission is, even though you're trying to keep a happy balance, but it's difficult juggling both from thousands of miles away.
It's, you obviously did an amazing job. 20-some odd years you've been married now,
Over
so
29.
that deserves a round of applause as well. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much,
Can I-
Dan.
sorry, I didn't-
Certainly.
You just passed me up. No, I'm kidding. Thank you for your commitment to this nation. One thing that struck me in your story is you kind of quickly talked about your transition back from combat, and then with your, losing your job and whatnot. Is there something that communities can do to help aid the transition with veterans from active service back into the normal daily life? I know it's a heavy
You know,
question.
I think working through your VFW, I'm a life member for here in Carroll Stream. And I know from all the different deployments starting as early as 1990, there was no type of transition for us coming home or even being accepted by the public. When I used to wear my uniform, I had people spitting at me in 1990 and picking fights with me on the metro or on the bus. But the support system now, as you transition to get out, there's more things that are available for the family, for the spouse, counseling through the military side. That they're helping to learn from past mistakes, because there's a high suicide rate and there's people, doing harm to themselves or their family, or when they come home because they don't know how to cope. Because if you're given a 19-year-old in a vehicle, or a 20-year-old at the most, the power to control somebody's life, then come home, could not find a job or get reinstated, they don't have a sense of well-being to be accepted back in. So they don't know how to handle that. You had all that responsibility to come home as nothing. A lot of the soldiers that I came home with some people got divorced, some people were homeless, living in shelters. I'd bring them home with me to kind of help offset it. But there are more things in place now, and doing, but I think through the VFWs and other outreach things and programs associated, there's a better way to help and track instead of people falling through the cracks.
Thanks for sharing that. It's
Hope
good to
that
see things
helps.
improve.
There wasn't nothing when I came home. I came home, I lost my job. I was unemployed. I volunteered to do whatever I could. So it was a very challenging first year of marriage with all those obstacles and roadblocks thrown in. But got through it.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much for your service, and you may have seen, he mentioned the VFW. He was involved with the Memorial Day service, providing the amplifier and the
Yeah,
music.
the music.
At our
Speakers
Memorial
and
Day
stuff.
service this year. And speaking of that, one of the reasons we're doing this is to make sure people are aware that the village, the Park District, the VFW, and community members throughout Carroll Stream are banding together, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it later in the meeting as well, are banding together to raise money for a new Veterans Memorial. And we'll discuss, over the weekend, we had a very successful event. I'm sure we'll be talking about that and other things coming up. So please keep alert to social media, the websites of the village and the Park District, and we'll give other details on ways that you can participate and donate and help make this Veterans Memorial a reality. So we honor all the heroes that are our neighbors. So thank you, Dan, very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dan.
for your time. Have a good night.
Thank
too.
You too.